We will be conducting tonight's meeting in person as well as in virtual setting via Zoom. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting tonight on Wave Channel 18 and online through the city's YouTube channel. If you would like to participate in live public comment via the Zoom platform, please refer to the agenda for instructions. Chairman Gilbert will begin the meeting momentarily.
Here we go. Good evening. I'd like to call the City of Lincoln Planning Commission regular meeting of January 17th, 2024 to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Eklund.
Here.
Commissioner Eric Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Jerry Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner McKinney.
Here.
Commissioner Reedy.
Here.
Chairman Gilbert.
Here.
And Vice Chair Hutchison will not be in the meeting today with notification.
Thank you. A pledge of allegiance. I'm going to ask our secretary to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 4 is agenda modifications. Do we have any thoughts on that? We'll then move on to item 5, public comment on non-agenda items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. And
I have not received any comment cards before the meeting. I do not see any hands raised on Zoom. And I don't see any hands in the room.
thank you. With that, we'll move on to information items from staff. I'd like to report our Vice Chairman, Commissioner Michelle Hutchison, has a medical issue and won't be able to attend the meeting this evening. Hopefully she'll be mended up totally by next month. Because of that, we will not do our reorganization of the commission this evening, and hopefully we'll be able to do that, and we'll pick somebody to take my place next month. Now, are there any other informational items from staff? Seeing a lot of heads shaking back and forth, I'll move to 7, disclosure of ex parte communication. Start down at the end with Whitney.
I have none.
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 And that makes 6 of us. I have none either. So the next item is the consent calendar. The consent calendar needs to be reviewed and approved the November 15th, 2023 meeting minutes.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Would you like a roll call or would you like to do voice call?
We'll do a voice. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0-1. We'll move from 8 to item. Let's see, I've got two agendas here, so let me get myself squared away. Item 9, public hearings. Grades and Locks is request for a conditional use permit for the operation of a home-based salon, which will allow customer contact during delivery of service. The home business will be located at 1246 Carrington Lane, Lincoln, on Assessor's Parcel 328-190-002. And we'll ask for a staff report, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. Compliments of the new season to you all. Tonight before you is a conditional use permit application by Edwidge Joseph. Edwidge is proposing to operate a home-based breeding business with customer conduct. She filed the application for the business in July of 2023. This file was filed pursuant to Lincoln Municipal Code, Chapter 1856. The proposed site for the business is 1246 Barrington Lane in Lincoln Crossing. If approved, Edwidge seeks to specialize in African hair and synthetic fiber extensions, braids and locks, who operate from a designated corner on the first floor in a kitchen. This is a very small business. It's going to be owner operated and services by appointment only. Business will be open Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays between 9 and 5 p.m. In the process of doing our reports, we received public comments and we incorporated the public comments in our writing. The project location is a corner in the kitchen, as you can see. There is a chair there. Then there is a hair dryer. So she'll be operating from that small corner in the kitchen. Conditions of approval. Applicant is aware that she's not going to make any improvements to the principal use, which is a primary residence. There's not going to be any signage posted outside or anywhere else related to this project. Applicant is supposed to maintain hours of operation between 9 to 5 p.m., Thursdays and Fridays. Customer parking is provided on the driveway or on the street in front of applicant's residence. Braids and locks will ensure that they secure a business license before commencing their operations. This project proposal is actually consistent with City of Lincoln General Plan, Lincoln Crossing, Specific Development Plan, and General Development Plan. And this is also made possible by the provisions in Lincoln Municipality Code, Title 18, Chapter 1862, which makes provisions for home occupations. Then this project is exempt from CEQA. That CEQA exemption is consistent with CEQA Section 15308, Class 1 of the existing facilities. Recommendations. Staff recommends Planning Commission to find the project exempt from environmental analysis based on CEQA Section 15301, Class 1 of existing facilities. Staff recommends that Planning Commission adopts Resolution 2024-01, approving braids and locks subject to specific conditions of approval. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the commission to staff?
Is there a condition to the conditional use permit on the number of employees that the person could have doing this business?
Yes, we do have, our code stipulates, we have a wall list, a checklist that we use when anybody comes to apply for a home occupation business. There is a checklist that they go through, and it includes number of people who are going to be involved, number of home occupation businesses that is allowable under the city code. It involves parking, it involves noise. Actually, that intake process is very restrictive. It ensures that most of the negative effects that HOAs are worried about in the communities, those negative effects are also taken care of by the city code. So yes, there is a restriction on the number of people who can work. In this case, this is a small business, owner operated.
But you could have an owner operated business with an employee or more than one. Is there anything restricting the number of employees at this home occupation?
Yes, there won't be.
Back away from the mic a
Okay.
little bit.
Sorry. Yes, there won't be any employees to be hired because the business is small. If, say, she needed a hired hand, she could hire an employee to assist her.
Is there just one employee allowed with a home office?
One employee allowed.
For a home office, one employee is allowed.
Okay, so you have an owner and one employee.
You could, but
Could.
it's just, I
And
think what
that's
you're
not the
struggling
intent.
with is
Yeah.
just the owners operating it.
Right.
She has no employees.
I understand that's the intent right now. but- So I'm guessing under the current situation, you might have two customers there at the same time, one completing a service and the other getting ready to. So you'd have like probably a maximum of 2 cars. I guess if you had 2 people working, it would be a maximum of 4 cars in the all at once.
Yeah, or 3, really.
Yeah,
but-
3.
Yeah, so either way, I don't think it's too burdensome on the street of the neighborhood. I mean, it's very limited. I believe it's 1 customer per hour limited. So, yeah, it shouldn't feel like anything else than someone visiting a friend in the neighborhood. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
also,
to add-
on-
Oh, sorry, to add on to that, this is service by appointment only. Applicant has confirmed that she's not going to have walk-ins. I'm sure everybody who is familiar with the hair braiding business is painstaking. She will usually, actually, she might spend even an entire day working on a single client. So she really gave us the assurance that it's usually 1 client per day. The possibility of 2 clients overlapping is very, very limited, given that it's appointment only.
Thank you.
Anything else, Sherry?
Just a point of clarification in Exhibit A of the conditions of approval, page 2, number 5. The operational days are Wednesday through Friday and the presentation said Thursday through Friday. So what is it, Thursday or Wednesday? I don't think it really matters. I just want to make sure the resolution is correct.
It does matter, actually. Thank you. I got, the applicant reached out to me last night to say she's busy. She has a full-time job, which she's trying to hold down. She's doing graduate studies. So trying to do this business 3 days a week will be too much. So she made that adjustment to 2 days.
I would recommend just approving it for the Wednesday through Friday, just to give flexibility in case she needs that in the future. I
Yes.
don't think it's a really big issue there.
I
yeah.
didn't know if she wanted it changed or. That's fine.
Prefer the, flexibility.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ready?
Just kind of piggybacking off of that, one of my questions was the hours, seems pretty restrictive. And I was just curious if I don't know if the applicant's here, but if we're gonna be approving, certain days. I don't know, I was just curious, why not like the full week or like, normal weekdays? Unless they want to keep it restrictive, but I was kind of along the mindset, why not, some flexibility in there? But I guess it's up to the applicant, so I wasn't sure if there was any desire to open it up for 5 days out of the week or.
Based on the interview that I conducted with her, she cannot do it at full throttle Monday to Friday during the regular week because she works as a registered nurse. Her schedule is irregular. She can work weekends.
Mhm.
So she only tends to this business Wednesday, Thursdays, and Friday. But as of now, she'll be utilizing Thursdays and Fridays only because of school commitments.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious if, since we're doing something, if we want to open it up or not, but
Again, I would encourage you to just let her operate a home occupation between Monday and Friday, 9 to 5.
yeah.
This is getting into the weeds, but I agree with you. It's just a home occ.
Is
Those
that-
are business hours.
Is that something we could propose to amend it to say Monday through Friday? Just, okay. All right. So I guess I'll make that recommendation last time. And then the other question I had is, I assume if there were any comments from neighbors, we would have seen anything, but has there been any comments received by the city from the neighbors or anything in that area?
Yes, after we sent out notices, we got a comment from the HOA, Lincoln Crossing HOA. They wanted the participant to reach out to them, which we advised her to do. We actually deferred a project from the hearing that was due in October and advised her to go and consult the HOA, which she did. And actually, she ended up presenting before the HOA at the community hall, after which she then came back to us to say she's confident enough that we can go ahead with the project, and we rescheduled it back.
Okay.
But I do want to add though, but up to this today, we have not received any more comments other than what's been provided to your
Okay.
commission in the staff report.
The HOA, okay. All right, thank you. That's all my questions for now.
For questions from the commission, I have two things I'd like to share. Okay, so the application indicates that the property has 5,000, that the building has 5,000 square feet. And based on the usage of this particular room, it would represent 2.6%. However, those numbers are both wrong. I'm in favor of the project, let me say that. I think it's very positive when a resident comes to us ahead of time and they're going to have a business in their home, because I think all of us know that there must be many, many businesses out there that are operating without the city's knowledge, without any approvals, and that can open up Pandora's box. But I did a recalculation, I did some research. This home doesn't have 5,000 square feet, it's 3,199, which means that the project area is 4%. Now, I have no problem with that, but I think our records need to be accurate, because someone could come in the future and question why the city approved this, because our numbers are wrong. So whatever the commission chooses to do, you want to prove it, I'd like those the correct numbers in the report. Well, it was in a couple different places. It was in the application. And I guess that's where the staff numbers, you know, when they give you an application, you pick numbers up from the information from the application. So I saw it in two different places.
Understood, but the only item that there's action by the planning commission on tonight is the resolution, which is where that's contained in section 3.
So I
So
understand.
we're not going to go back and change a staff report.
No, I'm
but-
not suggesting that.
Okay,
I'm ready
just-
to vote in favor of it this evening, but I just want the record to reflect.
We can clarify section 3 of the resolution.
I would hope everybody.
Are
agrees.
you sure that your numbers are correct?
Right.
I mean, she may have added a addition or some, or finished basement, who knows? I wouldn't,
I'll tell you, I went a step further. I was a commercial lender. And so when I went on Zillow and I found this home, I then went and researched the same home in other locations to see whether they were 5,000 or 3199. And it turned out that they were, because I couldn't actually measure the house, but all the others were same model, it's 3199. So that's why I came to that conclusion. Which is what I would have done when I was going to loan money to somebody. Trust but verify. Okay? Okay, is there anything else from the commission? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak to this particular item?
I did not receive any cards, but I do have a hand raised online.
Please.
Caller with the phone number ending with 3414. You can speak. I unmuted you. I don't know if you have your mute button on. So you need to unmute yourself so we could hear you.
Hello?
There you go. We can hear you now. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate the party actually going through the process and, getting the proper licensing. But, I've been a resident since 2006, part of the homeowners association. I don't know how prevalent it is to have these businesses. I've seen like childcare and other facilities, maybe close to the area where this is. And so I'm just wondering, I guess, how is this enforced? I mean, I understand if people have visitors, they have a certain amount of company, et cetera, but when you think of a business, especially, sorry, I'm a husband, and the hair salon thing, that's a long process. So I'm certainly hopeful that it can be really governed according to what the licensing or the approval is, so that we don't have a bunch of cars and people waiting, et cetera. So I naturally have a little bit of a concern about it. So do we have assurances of enforcement, or at least how is it regulated once it's approved?
So these types of conditional use permits and municipal code sections are enforced largely by violation. If code enforcement receives a complaint that there's too many cars, that there's a business operating beyond the hours that are authorized, then code enforcement opens a case and investigates, and the appropriate action is determined, whether that's a corrective notice all the way up until revocation of a conditional use permit.
Okay, thank you. I think that pretty much gets us, just like I said, if I don't know, do they limit the number that you can have within an area? Like if the neighbor decided to do it, or someone down the street did it, is there some kind of a limitation on how many can be in a particular area?
Yeah, this is Mel Pavlin. It's a case by case basis. It is codified to with the requirement of CUP, but there isn't any limitation. There's no way for us to really enforce how many you can have within within a block or an area as far as having these types of uses. At the end of the day, home occupation is a small scale operation. The idea is that the primary use of the site is still residential. But to answer your question, there isn't a certain number that can be limited within an area. It's just the applicant comes in, pay the fee, go through the process, and be subject to the approval by the plan commission in terms of getting the permit. And it's really on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, and I would just add that it would be informed by complaints. You know, if we had a lot of complaints regarding home occupations, we'd take a harder look. I mean, this home occ is going through a CUP process right now. It's pretty rigorous for a, pretty benign use. So you have another crack at it, you can kind of evaluate as it comes, issues come to the fore, so.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess the final thing is there a certain number that you hit to where you're like, oh, I have X amount of customers, now it's time for me to get a building, a commercial area, and open up my business?
Again, I would say, no, it's governed by the conditional use permit and the municipal code regulations.
In other jurisdictions where I've worked, it has been limited to one customer per hour. So that would be a total of 8 customers a day, but just sequential. So that is something we could look at in terms of limiting customers by time.
All right, thank you.
I believe the ordinance limits the area used to 15%. So if that was 15% of the total area, so if that was exceeded, as it probably would be under that scenario, that's how one way in which it would be.
Yeah, that's
enforced.
another way of limiting the use. Yeah, containing it. Yeah.
It should also be noted for the record that as our city attorney spoke to earlier, a conditional use permit can be revoked at any time that it does not meet reasonable requirements that the city put in place. So for any reason, this became a problem brought to our attention, the city staff would do their research and could very well decide to bring it forward for revocation of the use permit. And that does happen. And it can also be done at the city council level where they can revoke the permit of a business, a very large business. And in Lincoln, that happened when I was sitting on the city council. So if anything gets out of hand, we have the means through the various laws and regulations to take appropriate action to protect the people who live in the area.
Caller 3414, do you have any other comments? He put his hand.
No further comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other hands raised in Zoom.
Thank you for your questions, caller. With that, we can bring it back to the council, close the public hearing, and the chair will entertain a motion if someone desires to make it.
I guess I'll move to make a motion.
Why don't you add on the things that you talked about?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll do my best on that one. Let's see. So I move to adopt resolution 2024-01, approving a conditional use permit for a home occupation to allow personal contact with customers at 1246 Barrington Lane in Lincoln, with the amendment to the operating hours of Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And also the clarification of square footage.
Let me just
Okay.
real clear, that's a clerical error
Okay.
that we can address as a clerical revision.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I'm assuming that that motion include, or is,
Jerry, Jerry,
sorry.
someone-
Oh,
Oh, I saw you push your button. Sorry, go ahead, please go ahead. Jerry.
Preparation.
I am assuming that your motion included determination that the project is exempt from the CEQA,
Yes.
right? Thanks.
Any further comments before we take a vote?
Are we ready for a roll call?
Ready for roll call?
Thank you. Commissioner Eric Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner McKinney,
Yes.
Commissioner Eklund,
Yes.
Commissioner Jerry Johnson,
Yes,
Commissioner Reedy,
Yes.
Chairman Gilbert.
Yes. Motion passes 6-0-1. Thank you. And would you please, staff, would you please thank the applicant for starting a business in Lincoln? We appreciate her efforts and we wish her all the success in the world.
I will. I also want to extend my thanks to all of you commissioners. Thank you very much.
Item 9B, Tattoo Parlors Municipal Code Update. A public hearing to consider allowing tattoo parlors as a permitted use and removing the 400-foot minimum separation requirement from residential uses, churches, and schools. Staff report, please.
There we go. Good evening, planning commissioners. My name is Michaela Noble, assistant planner here with the Community Development Department. The item we have before you is a public hearing to consider amending Title 18 zoning of the Lincoln Municipal Code regarding tattoo parlors. Currently, the zoning ordinance conditionally allows tattoo parlors in commercial districts. However, proposed tattoo parlor locations must first meet a minimum separation requirement of 400 feet from all existing residential uses, churches, and schools in order to even apply for the conditional use permit. Under the city's current zoning standards, there are limited locations that could accommodate a tattoo parlor due to the 400-foot requirement. This map depicts the potential locations of tattoo parlors under the current zoning ordinance. The existing residential uses on this map are indicated in blue. The schools and churches are indicated in the pinkish purple color. The commercial districts are located in the green regions, and the red areas are the 400-foot buffer that tattoo parlors must stay out of. City staff is proposing to amend Title 18 zoning to list tattoo parlors as a permitted use in commercial districts and to remove the 400-foot separation requirement. In October 2004, Ordinance 776B was passed, which conditionally allowed tattoo parlors in commercial zones as long as they're 400 feet away from residential uses and churches and schools. Prior staff had recommended that this use be allowed conditionally, and the former chief of police requested that this 400-foot minimum separation requirement be imposed. Staff researched this ordinance and could not find any rationale such as correlating crime statistics or supporting documentation that could justify the need for the 400-foot requirement. Traditionally, there have been negative stigmas associated with tattoos and tattoo parlors. Tattoos have been seen as taboo and weren't widely accepted, and parlors have been seen as detrimental to the community. Since Ordinance 776B was passed in 2004, tattoos have become more commonplace and accepted. Reports show that in 2023, 32% of American adults have at least one tattoo, an increase of almost 10% from a 2010 survey. The Lincoln Police Department has expressed no concerns in allowing tattoo parlors as a by right permitted use and removing the minimum separation requirement. By researching this topic, staff found that the city's tattoo parlor regulations are more restrictive in comparison to other land uses typically allowed by CUP, such as alcohol and tobacco sales. Alcohol is considered an intoxicant, while tobacco is linked to multiple health issues. Yet alcohol and tobacco sales uses aren't subjected to a 400-foot separation requirement. Tattoo businesses must follow the Safe Body Art Act of 2011, also known as AB 1168, state health and safety code, and county health permit and operation requirements. Also, tattoo artists in California cannot tattoo anyone under the age of 18, regardless of if they've received parental consent. Overall, there are already existing systems in place to protect sensitive groups and ensure that tattoo shops operate safely. As such, staff believes that this land use is sufficiently regulated. Staff surveyed local jurisdictions, tattoo parlor regulations, and found that they vary in where and how tattoo parlors are permitted and what business type that they're classified as. None of the jurisdictions surveyed have a minimum distance requirement from sensitive groups. However, the city of Loomis does not allow tattoo parlors in a location that's adjacent to a residential district. This table reflects the staff survey completed on local jurisdictions and how they're permitted. This was also included within the staff report. Proposed amendment is consistent with the Lincoln Downtown Urban Design Plan. Districts 1 and 2 comprise all commercial zones located in downtown. The Downtown Urban Plan's vision statement and community goals and objectives states that, quote, downtown will become the focus of community activity where pedestrians will stroll along interesting storefronts, cafes, and restaurants. The plan also states that the intent of the downtown core is to, quote, create a lively sidewalk environment for shopping, eating, and socializing, end quote. Tattoo parlors can contribute to the creation of this vibrant, active downtown community, as well as generate pedestrian traffic for other downtown businesses. Some tattoo customers research shops and/or artists before deciding where they'll get a tattoo, meaning that people who don't reside in Lincoln could be attracted to our downtown area for this particular product. This could increase non-resident sales for shops and restaurants located near and around tattoo shops. Therefore, tattoo parlors support the community's vision outlined in the Lincoln Downtown Urban Plan. The proposed amendment is also consistent with several of the policies listed in the City of Lincoln General Plan. Policies surrounding the goal of attracting and expanding new businesses would be further implemented, as removing barriers for this type of business would expand and diversify the city's business portfolio. The Planning Commission is required to hold a public hearing on any proposed amendments to Title 18 zoning and make a recommendation to City Council in accordance with Chapter 18.92 amendments. The actual amendment to Title 18 would look like what is listed on screen. Staff recommends the Planning Commission determine that the Title 18 amendment complies with CEQA guidelines, Section 15378, and adopt a resolution recommending City Council adopt an ordinance adding tattoo parlors and/or body piercing establishments to the list of permitted uses within the commercial district and remove the 400-foot separation requirement. Thank you for your time.
Under the definition of a tattoo parlor, does that include or authorize body piercings?
Yes, so in our code, how tattoo parlors are governed, it's tattoo parlors and/or body piercing establishments. So they're all under the same business type category, since they kind of do go together in some instances. I know a lot of parlors have, corresponding body piercers there as well.
Yeah, I thought that was the case. Well, I want to thank you, and I wanted to compliment staff for including that Pew Research article. That was fascinating and frankly pretty surprising to me.
Of course.
You have a quick comment. I had reached out to staff about, I really appreciated the table showing what other jurisdictions are doing. I thought that was very useful and helpful in thinking through this. I was a little concerned about whether or not by right having a tattoo location directly adjacent to residential could potentially be problematic, not from a PD perspective, but more from operational hours perspective. I did a little bit of research to just look at what are other tattoo parlors doing from a time frame? And it looks like most of them open, later in the morning, maybe noonish. Most of them close between 6 to 8, some of them 9 to 10. But I was a little concerned, are some of these maybe wanting to operate midnight, later than that? But it didn't seem like that was the case as I looked at other existing businesses within the region. So that sort of satisfied my initial concern, and I just wanted to share that information.
Like to speak to this item?
Chairman Gilbert, I did not receive any cards before the meeting. I do not see any hands raised on Zoom, and I don't see any in the room.
Struck out. Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing. I'll bring it back to the commission for your thoughts, action, whatever.
I'll share some thoughts. Why not? I agree that the information that was given to us was really helpful. I was surprised that the amount of adults was as low as it was, because I feel like every other person has a tattoo these days, even my mom, which is really weird. I don't, so I feel like I'm the minority for sure. I do think that there is a stigma that nefarious things occur around tattoo parlors, and I just don't agree. I know that I have a lot of friends. I personally didn't do this, but I would have if I had thought about it prior to having my daughter's ears pierced. It's actually a safer location. It's more sterile. And I know a lot of my friends take their daughters to have their ears pierced at tattoo parlors because it is such a controlled, sterile environment. So, and it's art. And I appreciate the fact that you brought forth the revitalization aspect to our downtown, and that it's art, that it could bring people from outside of our community. And it's just one more thing that Lincoln would have to make it kind of more interesting and well-rounded, like most downtowns. So those are my thoughts.
Anyone else like to comment before we go to the vote? Seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion. Barry?
I would move the approval of Resolution 2024-02, recommending that the City Council adopt an ordinance adding tattoo parlors and/or body piercing establishments to the list of permitted uses within a commercial district C, Chapter 18.22, and remove the 400-foot separation distance requirement, and also find that this is not subject to CEQA review.
Second.
I have a motion in the second. You have a roll.
Commissioner Jerry Johnson? Commissioner Reedy?
Yes.
Commissioner Eklund?
Yes.
Commissioner Eric Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner McKinney?
Yes.
And Chairman Gilbert?
Yes. Motion passes 6-0-1. That finishes our agenda items. We'll go now to item 10, general business, the year ahead overview and discussion of long-range projects and priorities.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Efren Sanchez, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. I'd like to take this opportunity to provide you all with an update of the city-initiated projects that we see listed on the screen. This is a list of the projects that we're currently prioritizing for working on our long-range planning activities. So we have the downtown Lincoln Green Zone specific plan. Currently, there's an RFP deadline. We're requesting proposals from planning consultants due February 16, 2024. Then we have also the general plan and housing element annual progress report, which is an annual state report that we must submit to the state every year on our general plan implementation and also our housing element implementation. So that's going to be coming towards you guys in the upcoming planning commission hearing in February. And then we also have the accessory dwelling units, the ADU ordinance. That one's looking more like tentative PC either in March or April. And then other Lincoln Municipal Code updates. For example, one of them today, the 2 parlors, that was just one of them. And then other general plan implementation measures as well. Going a little bit more further into the downtown Lincoln Green Zone, essentially the city is seeking proposals from planning, like I mentioned, planning consultants to assist us in developing and implementing of the downtown Lincoln specific plan or green zone. The goal of this project is to adopt a specific plan with objective urban design standards from a form-based code to facilitate mixed-use infill housing and expand affordable housing options in downtown Lincoln. So we're really excited about this project. And again, as I mentioned, the RFP was released last Friday, January 12th. And then the deadline to submit proposals from consultants is on February 16th. So that's in a month. And subsequently, we'll be selecting a consultant, negotiating and finalizing the contract. And then we'll have City Council authorize the contract. We're targeting March 26th. And overall, the whole specific plan, that project deadline is set for June 30th, 2026. And just wanted to add that we anticipate that a specific plan public workshop will be 7 months from the project kickoff date. So they'll looking perhaps around October of 2024. Again, this is just a map of the area that will be covered under the downtown Lincoln specific plan.
Just the green zone, right?
Well, the specific plan will be the entire thing. So everything that's highlighted in all the visual colors. But there'll be specific attention given to just the green zone. But overall, the whole green zone, the Lincoln specific plan will be the entire thing.
Thanks, Efren. I just want to jump in. Yeah, please feel free to jump in and ask questions. This is meant to just kind of prime the pump, get you guys excited about planning projects, get into the real long range stuff that we're doing, and kind of spark some interest in our long range efforts. So yeah, just jump in. Efren will pause and solicit questions from you if we're not getting enough input. But yeah, it's meant to be more of a conversation.
The reason I asked that question is people that are at home viewing this would look at that map, they'd look at the comment downtown Lincoln Green Zone, and they'd assume it's this green piece on the bottom. That would be the fair assumption.
Admittedly, not the best map. We beg forgiveness. So. Essentially, everything that's on the slide right there would be covered.
Yes.
We got lucky because yeah, they did specify that the red zone, which is our the core, the historic core, but Efren solicited feedback from SACOG and they said that we could include our more larger downtown, which I think is hugely important because it's feeding into that core. So.
Again, like I mentioned earlier, we also working on the general plan and housing element annual progress reports. It's a report that's due to the state every year by April 1st of every year. And looking at the general plan implementation, that's the status implementation of all the measures across all elements. So that's 103 total implementation measures. So the way you think of this is like essentially by having your implementation measures, you're feeding into the goal of and the vision of the general plan. So once all those implementations get completed, your whole vision, your whole general plan, it's done. Then you work on a new one for the next planning horizon.
And so to jump in,
yeah,
we started looking at these and there's a spreadsheet of 100 of policies that, that folks put a lot of time and effort into in 2008. And, you know, a lot of times these kind of policies get put up on a shelf and it's, you know, okay, we'll get to it. But this reporting system kind of holds us accountable in achieving those actual priorities. And in thinking about our work as a planning department, it's like, well, we have this here. Yeah, it's from 2008, but a lot of these policies are good planning policies. And we're looking to kind of dust them off and reinvigorate them and maybe get your guys' take and prioritizing how we tackle them. So we can disseminate like that spreadsheet and have you guys kind of look at them and see if they seem dated or not dated. Either way, we're set out to accomplish these over the next, you know, we have till 2050, I guess. But there might be ones that are more urgent. And instead of kind of reinventing the wheel and saying like, how do we approach this? Like, it's already there. You know, a lot of these things are already set on paper. So I think it's important to, you know, action the things that we already have in place. And I know, Jerry, you know, you're passionate about the general plan as well, but this is really the nuts and bolts of it. So I think if you guys are amenable, we'll send an email with that spreadsheet out to you. You guys can take a look and kind of say like, oh, this makes sense, or this is what we're doing. You know, I mean, this is what we're supposed to do. So it's a way to kind of enter into the general plan, I think, in a very practical way. It's really the implementation. So just trying to emphasize that, and not let it just be some words on a page, which it kind of can always be. So.
In a similar vein, we also have the housing element annual progress report. So that looks at the implementation measures, but at least with those, the implementation measures, right now we're currently on the, you know, the 8-year cycle. So that goes from 2021 to 2029. And we look at that planning horizon for those 8 years and the implementation measures for the housing element. It pretty much outlines for us what sort of things we need to work towards, like, you know, increasing housing in the city. And also, so it looks at the status of the housing element implementation measures, where we are with our RHNA numbers, our RHNA progress, which is our regional housing needs assessment. You know, our RHNA number is 5,000. So then, you know, it allocates at different affordability categories, what sort of housing production we have to do in the city of state mandated to do. It also looks at the number of issued permits that were produced during a calendar year, and also the certificate of occupancy. So that means like certificate of occupancies are given at the end of, once a building permit gets finalized, you receive a certificate of occupancy. And so that it's very, HCD is highly regulates on what we report on that annual progress report. So they have this massive spreadsheet that is really specific on what we input in there.
So I would just add, sorry, but that is strict. The housing element is like, it's like almost like night and day. I mean, it's the numbers, you know, meeting our numbers, and it's much drier than, and we put a lot more effort into like meeting those numbers, counting for those. And it's frankly not as fun as thinking about some of the other implementation measures that are like, hey, let's do outreach for economic development to attract business. I mean, there's like all this sorts of planning stuff that's like, I wish we were held a little bit more accountable on, just so we would prioritize those or action those a bit, because we do tend to have to focus on the housing element numbers, just because RHNA, if we don't meet those numbers, like we start to lose funding and things like that. So it starts to take a lot of our bandwidth on the housing stuff. And then I think the other planning measures kind of fall by the wayside a little bit, which I don't think is really what we want.
So expect those reports next month. And then subsequently, you'll make a resolution to forward to the City Council for them to review and file with the HCD by the April 1st deadline. We also have the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. So our Lincoln Municipal Code, it currently identifies secondary dwelling units. So it's not in compliance with our ADU state law. So essentially right now, as default, we have to apply the state law, but it'd be nice for us to adopt our own ADU ordinance, so we would have a little bit more flexibility on ADUs when it comes to regulating ADUs in Lincoln. We have a draft ordinance. That draft ordinance was produced with the help of one of our consultants, and then we'll be submitting that to HCD for a 60-day review. And at the same time, we'll be targeting in March or April to have you guys review that draft ordinance as well. And then once we get the okay by HCD, we'll go ahead and proceed with adopting the ordinance under city council ordinance.
Efron?
Yeah.
What do you mean by getting more flexibility with ADUs as the city? Does that mean having more control over regulating them or making it easier for people to have approval?
Yes, so it's like making them easier, more flexible to, you know, like as long as you meet this checklist, you're able to have an ADU. There's certain things like, for example, currently our secondary dwelling unit states something about like administrative permit, but we can't do that because, you know, state law supersedes it. So instead, we can adopt something in our ADU ordinance that says objective design standards, you know, as long as you meet these sort of criteria, it has a little bit more added flexibility. And also added flexibility on the size and, you know, number of ADUs that can be per parcel. So as long as we're not more restrictive than the state law, we can do.
Just to follow up on that, we had a situation where in downtown, where we have a much smaller urban fabric, you know, a primary unit's maybe 1,400 square feet, right? Single family. And so then you have an ADU in back of that that's, you know, 1,200 square feet. And it starts to loom over the, you know, the historic primary unit. And I'm concerned about that. So we were trying to massage it in the sense of like getting some kind of proportional, say that ADU would be no more than 50% of the square footage of the primary. And so we were kind of teasing that out and we'll continue to do so in order to kind of make sure that like ADUs don't start to dominate out of the backyards, you know.
Right.
At the same time, we're kind of fighting upstream on that because the state regulations are just like, let these things go, rip, you know, as fast as possible. So we're trying to exercise control where we think it makes sense. And that's what this ordinance will hopefully accomplish.
Okay, that makes sense.
I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but under new state law, it appears, at least on the surface, that you could have not only a dwelling unit and an ADU, but you could actually have duplexes on a single family zoned lot.
Yeah, under SB 9 now, yeah.
Yeah. So are you addressing that to
That's part
bring
of
our code into compliance
Yeah.
with it?
Yeah, we are. I mean, it's on our radar for sure. And that is, we were going to touch on that, I think, later. But yeah, we're catching up, you know, in regards to those state laws for sure.
So this is other Lincoln Municipal Code updates that are on our radar. And so we had a meeting with just planners and we went through like, okay, what needs to be updated in our Lincoln Municipal Code? And these are some of the things that are in our priority 1, sort of like updates. Other ones, we have other like priority 2 or priority 3 changes as well. But for sure, like, you know, auto uses in downtown, SB 35 and affordable housing density bonuses, design standards, the need for, you know, why do we have multiple hearing requirements, alcohol sales and PCN review, you know, can we do those more administratively? Development standards for drive-throughs, again, like we already talked about drive-throughs before, but this is like the actual adding development standards to where the drive-throughs are allowed, you know, outside of downtown. Taking a harder look at parking minimums and also some of the hearing constraints that we have under the subdivision ordinance Title 17. So those are just some of the like, you know, laundry list of items that we're trying to work on. And yeah. And then that leads to our general plan and specific plan. So planning is the primary responsible for the land use element and the housing element, like I mentioned. Planning also acts secondary reviewers to other elements such as economic development, transportation circulation, public facilities and services, open space, conservation, health and safety element. Just to reiterate, there's 103 implementation measures across all 7 implementation measures. And I can show you guys, currently our general plan has completed 12, 12%, and then 67 are ongoing and 21 are incomplete, meaning we haven't even touched them or started work on them yet. So, yeah. I can show you guys the implementation measure spreadsheets that we were talking about earlier as well. But feel free to jump in if you have any questions.
This is the non-housing implementation measures. And if you, I guess, go to the headers, you can kind of show them just briefly how it's, oh, that's the housing one.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, that's the housing one.
This is the housing one.
The one that we're not so passionate about. But yeah, he'll give you a brief kind of just mapping out of it.
Is this supposed to be a site test? Because I can't read.
Sorry.
I can't
I'll
read
make
it.
it larger. So for
I'm supposed
example,
to have good corrected.
He's just going to give you an example of what one of these implementation measures looks
so
like.
under our housing element implementation measure, there's implementation measure 2.4,
There we go.
which is amend our zoning ordinance to allow accessory dwelling units in accordance with, state law, Assembly Bill, Senate Bill 1069. The city will promote ADU development by providing guidance and education materials on the city's website. Information will include the advantage of building ADUs, including permitting process procedures and construction resources. So essentially, by us doing our ADU ordinance, we're actively working on completing this implementation measure. So that's something that we would then update on the status here of where we are with doing that. So, yeah.
I'm sorry.
As you knock these things off the list, so to speak, are new ones getting added, or when do those get reviewed, or how did this remind us how it originally got set up?
Yeah, I think that's
Not
what
that
we're
you want
struggling
more
with.
things added to the list, but I'm curious.
I know, I think I like where you're going in the sense that we have the list that's in the general plan that came in 2008. And so, I don't know if Efren was even born in 2008, I mean, he was probably in second grade. Anyway, we kind of look at these things that are old and we kind of discount them and say, 2008, it's this old thing. But I think I guess where I'm trying to go is look at these are valid, good planning. I mean, there was a lot of effort put into this original general plan. It's an effort that happens, once every 20 to 25 years. Typically, this one was 2008 to 2050. So it's ostensibly to take us to 2050, or I think we're able to take it to 2050. I think there is a lot of talk or kind of thought of revisiting that a lot sooner, like really soon, and updating the general plan sooner rather than later, more on a 20 to 25-year cycle, which is typical. So when you do reopen the general plan or do an update of the general plan, then you'll be going through all those policies, evaluating them, reconsidering them, adding new ones, brainstorming, going out to public comment for that. So I think in the sense of us getting really dialed in on those implementation measures, the current general plan, that could really help us get a head start on starting to evaluate the general plan and start to maybe get consensus or passion or decidedly thinking hey, these are really outdated. These don't work, or they do work and they're still let's work on what we got, So we got to do homework, and that's kind of the nutshell of that.
So if there's an action item in there that truly is outdated, right? This just isn't something we're going to do. It doesn't make sense to do, or laws have changed and so it's superseded. Does that just automatically come off the list, or do you have to address it in some way just to say this is superseded for these reasons? And
I
then
don't think it's as strict as that. I think it just kind of naturally deprioritizes, but
Yeah, and also you kind of have make note of that. If it is outdated, if it's no longer something that we were going to look to prioritize or change as prescribed, then you would make a note of that in this other column. And then when you go to let's say you want to update that entire element, just the element itself, let's say if it's under housing and you want to update, I mean, the housing element has to be updated every 8 years. So then at that point, that's when we're drafting the next update that's when we look at those and see like which ones are still working for us and which ones are not working, and do we add new ones to comply with state law and so forth.
Okay. Thank you.
To provide a little historic reference here, when the plan was adopted in 2008, and it was at least a 7-year project, there was a requirement to do an annual review of the implementation measures. And like you say, there was over 100 of them. And every year, I think, it's been done since then. And if something was outdated, on the right-hand column, you just write, it's not being pursued because bum, bum, bum. And that would certainly be adequate.
Yeah, just documenting it and see like, so like we can take a harder look and be like, hey, are we veering off too far from the general plan's original vision? Like, should we take a pause and like reassess this whole element or the whole general plan itself? Yeah, just depends on the circumstance.
I have a quick question. Let me know if this is relevant to the general plan, but is there a place in the general plan that would pertain to placemaking or parklets for downtown? That's something that I feel really interested and passionate about. I'm not sure if there's a place for that I would focus on.
I would say 100%. I'm trying to think right off the top of my head, land use.
Or would that go into like
Open
the
space, there's an open space
revitalization?
element. And I don't know if that speaks to like downtown parklets per se, but for sure, there's a broad policy in the general plan that should encourage those. And then they get more granular on the specific plans where you're really looking at like where they would be located.
I could talk to Bartlett's because I brought a project before the city council when I was the vice mayor, and we don't have anything on. I did a lot of research on the park that's in San Francisco. I brought that group up here to Lincoln, the 2 gentlemen that managed parklets for San Francisco. They have dozens and dozens and dozens. It's a big deal in San Francisco. And bottom line is nobody was supportive of it at the time. Maybe now things would be different, but we'd have to start from scratch.
Huh.
But the easy way to do it is go to a city like San Francisco that's gone through all the pain and misery and yes and no and maybe and borrow from them rather than try and build it yourself and then adopt their plan to our community. Because there's a lot of ins and outs. And, want to have generic parklets, or do you want them to have the flavor of the business they sit next to that's going to be utilized in that? And that's what they've done in San Francisco to protect the integrity of their neighborhoods that they have. Chinatown's different than North Beach, which is Italian mostly, etc. So it's a big, big undertaking to do it right.
That's a great example of something that is relatively new, though. It's really sprang out of COVID too. So, I mean, back in 2008, I don't know if we were really talking about parklets that much, just as a planner,
And then there's always privately owned public open spaces, which is a variation on that theme. And again, San Francisco is an outstanding example of how that works. I wanted to thank you for doing this presentation. And would it be possible to get what you've been talking about in some kind of written form? I've been trying to keep notes, and I'm not so good at that.
we can certainly send you this PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's fine.
That'll work. And
Yeah,
then I think we
and-
just want to keep talking about this, as we kind of meet.
Us too, and I think that would help us in organizing our thoughts. And I particularly appreciated the first part of that, which I really messed up on, was when you were talking about what was coming before us in the next several months. And if you could include that in what you sent us, that'd be much appreciated.
I have some thoughts I'd like to share. So before I came here this evening, one of our supervisors, Shanty Lannon, had an open house for her new location on office on Lincoln Boulevard. And as I walked around, there were a lot of people there that I knew. One of them said, "Oh, we're building a hotel here." I said, "Yes, we are." Wonderful. Somebody said, "Well, how about the next roundabout?" I said, "Well, it hasn't come, nothing's come before this planning commission." I heard some talk at a lunch group that I go to. And then someone asked me about charging stations that are going to be built in the new Arco gas station on Lincoln Boulevard. And so that got me thinking maybe it would be, because we certainly have to be ambassadors for the city, certainly as planning commissioners. And I would like to see, when, I'm not talking about additions to homes, et cetera, but when a major event that we may have acted on last year, 2 years ago, 6 months ago, is going to happen, we get just a simple thing. Project A is going to happen. We're looking at a roundabout here, not a lot of detail. I don't want to put the staff to work doing a lot of busy work, but I think it would be important for us to get that. I didn't get it when I was on the city council either. I picked it up a lot of times from people in the community or committees, you know, that I sat. I'd go to Roseville to be in a regional meeting, and they knew more about a project in Lincoln because the developer was from Roseville, and they had lunch with them. And, you know, sometimes it's a little bit embarrassing when those things happen. You probably experienced that in your time being with the city. So I'd like to just think about that at the staff level and determine if you think it makes some sense. Because I personally would like it, and I see a lot of heads here going up and down. I also wanted to mention, well, this I'll wait till we get off this agenda item. If we could look at that, I'd appreciate it.
To your point, we do have the activity map online also that we keep up to date every day, pretty much, as far as what applications are in process. Even to point that it's being constructed, that map is updated constantly. But we can definitely honor your request to have some engagement with you, updates, announcements of projects that have been previously approved and then that are now will be into fruition, actual construction. So that's something we can engage with you on and definitely extend some announcements.
So when the company that's going to build a gas station with charging stations, when they pull their application, if I went on that site, it's going to tell me that it's coming up out of the ground?
There will be some level of updates online, but maybe not to a point that they're opening up. Maybe that's more of a staff being told by the applicant that, oh, we're going to be opening up in this date. So our activity map is more just tied to permits and any plans for grading, for example, but not to a point that when they're opening up, that's more of like maybe more a direct update from the applicant that we would know of. But definitely, if we get that point, that information, we will share it with you as it becomes more available to us.
Just looking to make us good, whatever, good, put in a position where we can speak about projects to people without saying, gee, I have to check into that. And where I have to send an email and to get an answer and take some staff time, et cetera. City I lived in previously was the fastest growing city in California. And they actually, we didn't have the internet then. They put out a document once a month and it told us, here's the 3 things that are going to happen this month or are happening. And that was very, very useful and informative. So
Peter,
we
or
talked about that
Chair Gilbert, we actually are hiring an economic development.
Oh, we're gonna have
Yeah,
them
so to
again.
share that with you, end of the month, I believe, and she's coming from Roseville. And I think, not to pawn it off, but it's a perfect
That's
job
the-
for her.
No,
And
you-
so, because it is, us staying abreast of all that is a
No,
little bit
you're-
challenging.
If
but-
I had heard that 10 minutes ago, I wouldn't have said a word, because that's who used to.
Yeah,
that's
she's
who
got the
used to
bandwidth.
Keep us up to date
Yeah.
till he retired and went to Canada. So, okay, wonderful. Good news. Thank you.
He's also going to be able to help us with outreach too, which is
Yes.
going to be hugely helpful for all these long-range projects that we're
Yeah,
undertaking.
he
So,
worked on the parklets issue with me, our previous economic development person. We both were very much in favor of it, but we got shot down. Why don't you, do you have anything else?
No, I mean, that concluded my presentation. I know
Any
you guys asked some
additional
questions.
questions
Is there
for
any
him?
other ones?
Yeah, I just wanted to second the appreciation for the summary. That was great. And also second getting a copy of the slide deck and the 103 items so that.
Oh, yes.
As well, because.
Just put all 7 names on.
Yeah,
it.
send it to everyone. Yeah.
Um,
A couple of things that are probably tangential to the ones you mentioned that that are of interest to me to see if there's a place for them is we've talked and seen plans relating to trails and open, the interchange and pedestrian and bike friendly elements of the city. And it would be helpful to me to get a little primer on kind of what we have done, what we're planning to do, where we are in that process a little bit, just to kind of get a 30,000-foot view of like how we're approaching this as a city. Here's where we're at. Here's where we're never going to get because there's a funding issue, or those kinds of things. Some primer on that would be helpful. And then I'm looking forward to some of those CUP cleanup things that you referenced, and maybe integrating some of the things relating to the chargers as part of that. And the alcohol stuff has come up a couple times for restaurants that seems a little onerous. So it sounds like that's on the radar too. Thank you.
for sure, that segues into, I think Mel, we were both going to mention some training, not training, but primers. And soliciting some help from some other departments here at the City of Lincoln who can kind of shed some light and give you an idea of like the priorities and the park funding, and kind of let you know how those people operate with those specific types of projects.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. That time of the year now, we offer you training opportunities. There is a couple of online outreach out there as far as commissioner of training. So UC Davis, I think, have upcoming online non-planning training online. So basically, that's something we can extend to you if you want that, or doing an in-person staff, kind of a more intimate level here before you, the presentation of various topics that might be of interest to you, as well as maybe having some of our sister departments being available here, Parks and Rec, Public Works, kind of getting some idea of what their functions as it involves to your decision-making on projects, because that's always kind of buried within the documentation and maybe not as apparent to you, but then definitely we can bring forth some staff representatives from various departments. That way you're informed and have the right tools at disposal for your, as a commissioner. So, but we can follow up with you directly as far as these upcoming classes, if you'd be interested. In particular, the one in UC Davis that's upcoming pretty soon here. So we need to get some sign up from you if you're interested. Or we can just have some more items for your various topics.
Now, just as we were brainstorming on this today, actually, we thought like, well, attending the Parks and Rec Committee meeting, you guys are more than welcome to. I think that's where you're going to go straight to a source and you can kind of get those questions, and encouraging you to kind of maybe just do one meeting at an economic development or, one of the other committees.
They have,
yeah.
Park and Rec has a park out for review right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah, Bella
They do.
Breeze yeah, that would be really informative because Araceli, who is the manager of that, I mean, she'll be right there and you can ask her questions directly.
Yeah, I mean, I've been watched over the last year that those both economic development and Parks and Rec, and it's great because they're focused on some things, but there's a little bit of 30,000-foot planning part of it is not really in that conversation for them that'd be useful. And I'm happy to do it one-on-one, but if other commissioners are interested, maybe this is the right forum for it. I don't know. I can't get my head around all of the pieces from there. I get individual chunks, and of course the new Bella Breeze Park planning, kind of top of mind in that side of things, but there's other pieces that seem be interested to know how they go together.
Another resource might be the League of Cities. I think I remember that the League of Cities for new council people, they also do for planning commission. The value there is you go to a session for a day or two, and you're in a room and you're learning along with planning commissioners from other jurisdictions, and you learn a lot at lunch, at
Mhm.
breakfast, all that kind of stuff, you know. It can be very, very valuable. So I don't know if that's still available.
Yeah, we can look into that as well. There's always something offered as an extended training for the commissioners. So we can share that with you as well.
And you might take a look at local government commission as well as a resource.
Chairman Gilbert, I just wanted to notate Efren's presentation will be included online under presentations tonight. And then next month, it will be part of the minutes. So presentations are always included.
All the detail that he showed us?
Well, not necessarily every word that he spoke,
I think
but the
that's what-
slides.
We'll appreciate that, but
Yeah.
I think some of the commissioners were after certain parts of the presentation, and I think it would be extremely valuable if we could get.
Yeah, I think that Excel file, right? All the-
That'll be a perfect primer for the item next month, which is on the general plan. Yeah.
And also maybe for context, we did one last year, right? The annual progress report. So maybe comparison's sake, we have that online. We can share that with you just more for the background. And then as you learn more about what's upcoming, then you have something to compare it with from the previous effort last year. So we can also share that with you.
I had lunch some months ago, probably a year ago, with our city manager. And shortly after he got here, and I suggested, you know, the idea of maybe a month where we don't have an agenda, because usually we have maybe one or two of those, that the staff, that is an opportunity to, let's do some educational issues that the commission or the staff believes are important, where we're not dealing with a regular agenda, and it might be extremely valuable to us. Probably good time to do that is anytime we find new commissioners coming on board, which would be, you know, after the first of the year, first few months of the year, after an election, you know, city council elections. Okay, anything else before we move on? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. So, we did the general business the year ahead. Item 11 is commissioner comments. I have two. I'd like each of you, if you have an opportunity, to maybe just send an email or something to Michelle and encourage her to heal quickly and join us. It's going through a difficult time. Anytime you get, your doctor puts you in the hospital, she's out of the hospital, but I know she'd love to hear from you. The second thing is, our agenda, unlike the city council, right at the top, it shows our names for the commissioners. But on the city council agenda, right after that, it lists the key people who attend the city council meeting, a lot of department heads, and their title. We don't have that. Now, let me explain to you, it would come, you know, before our agenda started. Let me tell you why I suggest that. So if I'm at home and I download a copy of our agenda, I don't know any of the names of the commissioners, but there they are right here. I don't know any of the names or the positions of the staff, and it's not there like it is with the city council. So when I have to call in or I follow a meeting and they say, Joe Brown, I think it would be important for them to know that Joe Brown is senior planner. or that Joe Brown is the city attorney, whoever it is that attends our meeting. Just take a little space on the agenda, could be there permanently. And I think from particularly now that, we have Zoom and there will be people at times calling in to make comments or find things out, I think it would be very useful to have the names and the titles. So what do my colleagues think about that? And if you're supportive of it, we'll ask staff if you could take a look at doing that. Okay? I have nothing else. Is there anybody else that has commissioner comment?
I can imagine several reasons why you do it this way, but it concerned me tonight when we had to identify the people on the other end of a Zoom call as with their telephone number. And, were we to get into some kind of a dialogue with them, it would be so much nicer if we could refer to them by the name and ask them to, so we could ask them to introduce themselves. Now, I'm expecting Christine to immediately say, well, how do we know that that's really that person's name? And I don't have an answer for that, but I think it would be less awkward than referring to somebody by the telephone number.
There are restrictions on what we can ask, I know at council meetings. I'd
It's
love
the
to
same
hear-
Brown Act. So statutorily, we cannot
You mean it's
require
not-
them to give their
it-
name.
Didn't turn tan for us, huh?
No,
But would it hurt for us to ask?
doesn't hurt to ask, but they aren't required to give it.
One small tangential, giving out their full phone number may not be a good idea either. In a recorded
Oh,
meeting.
I agree, but I'll leave that to the discretion of the caller.
I have a quick item also just as a potential request to consider. It's on the staff report. Would it be possible to add the planner's email beside their name? Because it just makes it easier to reach out instead of trying to guess your email address. Instead of emailing you, I could have emailed Kayla directly, so that'd be helpful.
And just so that the public knows and the commission knows, all of our emails here at the city are first name dot last name at lincolnca.gov.
Yeah.
So,
And
Somebody I know it uses a different formal name than their informal name. And I don't know which one to use. Is it Jeannie or Eugene or, just to throw something out.
I think mine is still active when I was on the council. And it's Peter Gilbert at the city. Any other commissioner comment? With that, we will find the meeting adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.